Hi everyone, this is Sergey Lagodinsky. I'm a member of the European Parliament, and welcome to another edition of Sergey Talk. We have interesting guests, as hopefully we will be having also in the future. And as you see, we are almost back to normal. There is a lot of life going on here in the European Parliament, and there is a lot going on in the world, and we would like to talk today with our two guests about the situation in and around Russia, the new, as some would say, country of evil. Others would say an aggressor. There are so many negative things that are said about Russia and many Russian people. Let's talk about this. Let's try to understand what is going on with my two very prominent guests. I will start with Kirill Martynov, who is a philosopher by education, a philosopher who has devoted his time and his life to many interesting philosophical analytical things. But his and your recent function was the head of policy department of the Novaya Gazeta, the newspaper, the very prominent opposition newspaper or independent newspaper in Russia for many years, and now you are heading and organizing Novaya Gazeta Europe, kind of a European outlet of this newspaper. Thank you very much for being here in Brussels with us. And Inna Berezkina, a good friend for many years, and it's also a pleasure to welcome you here in Brussels. Inna is an author and interpreter. But she is very well known to a lot of people also in Europe and worldwide as someone who is the head and the face of the so-called School of Civic Education. And we just figured out this school has celebrated, or will be celebrating, its 30th anniversary.
30 years this year. Right.
30 years this year. So the school was founded in 1992.
Lena Nemirovska and Yura Sinakosov founded us in 1992, and I mean, we are a good example of how the history of recent Russia could be developing, and where could Russia be, whether it be taking right decisions.
We will talk about that, but let me start with one thing that you, Kirill, wrote, and I think it was still written when Novaya Gazeta was functioning in Russia. Yeah. One of your texts, you were talking about, denazification urge of the Russian government, of many saying, we should denazify Ukraine and some say Europe, and you say what is going on there is a defuturization of Russia. What did you mean by that?
Probably it was the first such kind of experiment in the world history when you took a very large country, which is existing in the global world, and you try to cut off all connections of this country with the outside world. You can imagine that probably Islamic Revolution in Iran back to 1979 was something like this, but at this point, world become at our time, world become much more complex and much more global and much more interlapsed and interconnected. And if you start this kind of insane war like Putin did, it means that that you don't have any ideas what is the global world, what is contemporary world. Basically, a lot of experts in Russia pretend to say, want to say that Putin just afraid of future. He don't understand the real contemporary world, and he wants to stop this future from coming, because there is no place for him, for such guys like Putin in this future. So they want, to cut Russia from outside world, and they want to prevent Russia to be a part of the future of the global world. That was what I meant.
Inna, this is very interesting, fascinating analysis by Kirill. And the question is, we're sitting here, there are two prominent representatives of what we used to talk about as a civil society of Russia. Is there still civil society in Russia?
I'd be actually pretty hopeful here because, politically, as Kirill said, and as everyone understands, that Russia is like a quicksand now, and the vortex is Kremlin, and they're trying to reverse history and take the whole country back. But what we've been seeing during these 30 years, we've been seeing emerging institutions and emerging civil society. And many can say that civil society failed because we didn't prevent this aggression from happening. But I'd say that there are no societies more or less prone to democracy. It's all down to the efforts and to the circumstances. So I wouldn't say that circumstances were in favor, because we have to understand that civil society has been under pressure since 2012. Constant pressure that was growing, and it came to its peak recently. We've seen the complete erase of any independent thinking in Russia. And yet we have to understand that since the aggression, people took it to the streets. People put their freedoms and sometimes lives at stake. We have conscription offices being burned down. We have military officers refusing going to war. We have activists. We have movements. And despite the fact that most of the organizations, and we're talking about proto-institutions, because if we had more time, we'd be stronger by now, officially closed down, impossible to operate in Russia. And yet people keep working, people keep connections with Russia, and I think that there is hope there.
But, the critics would say, and many Ukrainian critics would say, you've been working on those issues and kind of trying to democratize and to support civil society for 30 years. And yet, here we are. The society that is basically in its majority, and we can argue whether there is 70% as the official polls are, or maybe 60%, but yet a majority of a society supports this atrocious, inhumane, and almost, I would say, genocidal war going on in Ukraine. Do you feel that you personally or your project failed?
No, I'd be still very cautious about the majority talks. There's been a very good report by Kirill Rogov recently, and he explains that...
Kirill Rogov, as just for those who don't know him, is also a thinker, a philosopher, political expert from Russia, who is also very prominent and very outspoken against the war.
So he speaks about imposed consent. So we have to understand, when we see figures like 71 or 75%, those are from the groups of people who didn't refuse to talk. So there is a lot of fear in the country. I don't think anyone can understand the real numbers of the support in Russia. We see that people protest silently. We see that people refuse to go with the flow. There is, of course, some support. We have to face that. But this is a huge country, and this country is in a very hard place right now. I don't think, and I'm in touch with many back at home, and I don't think there is a majority supporting the government.
Oh, that's interesting.
I think what we have understand about Russia is probably the majority of Russians. They just look for normal life. They want to keep themselves and their families like normal living, without any change and without any connection to war. And the only way how we can still look for this, search for this normal lifestyle, let's say, is to believe somehow to the state propaganda, because state propaganda offer you a kind of normalization. it's just a special operation. We don't kill civilians in Ukraine.
That's what the propaganda says.
Yeah, our president is not, a war criminal, and so on. And if you ever ask for some different sources of information, if you, let's say, start to read independent news, you face a lot of very hard questions about the future of Russia, the future of family, the future of your workplace. So
it's a normal reaction. People want a comfortable life.
It's a psychological defense, basically.
And I understand this from an analytical point of view, but isn't this how fascism functions?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
So we are in a fascist society.
In a way, it's maybe it's a new kind of fascism, because the classic fascism is about mass mobilization, and we don't see any mass mobilization in Russia. People just want to save some comfort. For decades, Putin government they said that all this dictatorship is about stability, and for now they also provide some kind of stability. Believe us, believe state propaganda of Russia, and after all you can live in comfortable and calm life. For now, it's not. It's very strange type of fascism, but it is.
It is fascism. So, but that means that even if people are against the war and they think they are against the war, but they don't speak out, then they make themselves also responsible for what is going on, right?
Some do. I mean, there is still a question whether this is a fascist state or whether this is a fascist society. I would be very reluctant to speak about the society. And the society is weak in Russia. We have to admit that. Civil society is emerging and strong and brave. But, of course, civil society is outnumbered.
And it's out of the country, right? I mean, most of the people.
Many still are there. I mean, you have 15,000 people in prison. They took it to the streets to protest with kids, facing imprisonment in Russian. Within the Russian state, this is different. It's not like taking to the streets in Berlin. It's completely different thing. It's completely different stake. I mean, we have to see those people. We have to understand everyone who is now facing up to 10 years in prison.
You know why I'm digging here a little bit, because of course, coming from Germany, there are a lot of parallels or a lot of kind of echoing from the German history about the responsibility of a common German citizen during times of Nazism. And of course, these are all questions that willingly or unwillingly you ask yourselves. Do you, even me coming, originally from Russia and being a Russian speaker, of course you ask yourself, when is your responsibility, when does your responsibility start? Does it start with speaking Russian or being raised there, or even if you're against it, being part of a Russian culture, and there you open the whole array of the canceling Russian culture debate. We don't want to, we don't have to go there. We don't have that much time. But I just wonder whether maybe we're making it ourselves, and there is this debate also here in the parliament, whether we're making it too easy to say, well, those polls are wrong, and most of the people actually, or there is a strong, also in opposition, kind of civil society. Maybe everyone is somehow responsible for what is going on?
I can answer that. I feel my personal responsibility to, let's say, undervalue risks and danger of Putin system. Because somehow we believed for many years that that any dictatorship will somehow end. So yeah, they imprisoned some innocent people, they persecuted people, they don't allow freedoms to Russia. But it's like a daily routine for many years. And
that was the perception.
Yeah. And after that they just started war. So we just say, okay, it's just our nice, well-known dictatorship. We understand what they are doing, and after that they breaking bad, they are going insane, and started the war. And it was the war. For me, the war have the same reasons why they imprisoned activists. they again, in Kremlin, these people just being afraid of the future and what happened with them when they lost their power. And so they just raised the stakes, and we didn't see this. We didn't see this risk, obviously, because just in few days before the war started, we understand that it could happen, but we feel like, it would be another stage of Donbass conflict, and that's all.
I'm really grateful for this question, because responsibility is the key word and the key issue for me. At school, we talk all these years, we've been talking about democracy and the rule of law and human rights and the importance of historical memory. And then we came to the point when we realized there is a missing element to all of that. Responsibility, civic responsibility, and what is it in reality? Because responsibility in a democratic society, it's not just going and participating in election, voting, or recycling. This is living the choices every day. You wake up in the morning, and every day you're making choices, and you're responsible for all of them. You're responsible for your thinking. You're responsible for how you treat others. You're responsible for what you leave at the end of the day. And this is missing, this thing, because many people, they do, and this is actually the case for Russia, they are not awake, they're sleeping. And that's why they take resort in this comfort, believing propaganda. They're not a fascist society yet, because there is no mobilization, this is true, but they're not awake. And we're speaking about the majority of the population, many people. And this is crucial. While the responsible citizens, and I think this would be the case for many countries, it's just that in other countries, the circumstances are more favorable. I mean, you can be still sleeping and not taking responsibility for what your state is doing, because your state is not killing other people. And it's just your karma. I mean, you're lucky to be born there.
Let's now step outside of the country and look at what is going on here. Because in Germany there is a lot of reporting, for example in Germany, but in many other countries, about what kind of status should the new people get, visas, and about their difficulties of settling down. And can you explain very briefly? Can you map out who is outside of the country? Because for many readers, for many viewers, they don't understand. They think, okay, well, maybe there is an exile, a government in exile who came out, or many people don't understand who came to Europe, and for what reasons, and how long are they going to stay, and what are they going to do? What do you think are the plans of this little Russia that kind of is anti-Putin and left?
No. First of all, I can say about my personal experience. I still think that what we face now, what I face now personally, is not an immigration. It's a question. You have two options. You can stay at your country and have no work, useful work. Work you like, and it's like my personal choice to provide this job for people. Like journalism, and the second option, you can leave country, and after that you can just basically provide this journalism which is needed for Russians inside country and outside country. And so we just for me, like these borders, it's not about some common streets of well-known streets of Moscow. I just choose to save my work, because I feel like it's important for some other people too. And I choose to save the journalist team of Novaya Gazeta. So that was my personal decision. And I feel like a lot of young people who left Russia during last month, they just have, let's say, aesthetical contradictions with Russian authorities. They just don't have, they can't live in let's say, occupied city, because Moscow is considered like occupied city right now.
Occupied by Putin.
By Putin, yes, because it's, if you can't even quote constitution, that there is that let's stop, let's say, aggressive war. If you can't even quote laws of Russian Federation publicly, it's like an occupation, because the police is making, this total control on the streets.
So for many people, and actually this echoes many people say, with the beginning of this war, they lost their motherland, they lost their country, because they don't feel in any way connected. I mean, they used to be critical of Russia and of the Russian government, but they felt somehow connected. And I have a feeling, even those who have been living abroad, I hear this, they're not connected anymore to this country. Is this the feeling?
I'm not sure whether it's about connection and cutting ties. I'd say rather the opposite. Many choose to leave the country, to be connected to the country, to continue working for the country. The mass relocation that we are seeing now is, as Kirill said, many people, they want to make difference, and it's not an immigration in the direct sense of the word. We do not want to assimilate with the societies we are coming to. We want other societies to benefit from our work, but we continue working for Russia, and this is the main. I mean, we want Russia we want to bring Russia back to modernity. We want Russia to be a part of the open world. We want the sustainable peace.
But do you think it's realistic after this, after the crimes that were done to Ukrainians? Do you think it's real? I mean,
in short distance, it's impossible. Nobody knows. But even if the war is over tomorrow, even if Russian regime changes tomorrow, we have to be realistic. We have to understand, like, it's miles to go before we sleep. It's a huge work lying ahead of us.
And on that note, both of you have a different, have one thing in common. You both think that education and new ways of education, civil education or academic education, is a vehicle to the future. That Putin is trying to deprive the country from. Do you think it will be still the same way of civil education? I mean, can you still do civil education like you've been doing for 30 years after Bucha, let's say?
The universal things are the same. I mean, we are facing this humanitarian catastrophe, but I mean, that doesn't change the main things. The things are that the values we're talking about will not change. I mean, after life will not be the same, but universal values will remain and will prevail. I mean, we all will leave with what happened in Bucha, where it's impossible. It's a point of no return. But then we have to continue, and I mean that we are at our school, and what Lena and Yura did. We are pioneers of civil society.
You were pioneers, and you were assigned a foreign agent, and also undesirable.
Then, the Association of School was labeled an undesirable organization.
So you have been also stamped.
2 badges of honor, yes.
Yeah. What about you? You also have your experience with free education, because you were attached to the higher School of Economics. I think this is the right term, in Moscow. This was a very renowned school. And then you were basically kicked out. Yeah. And you went your own way. So what is your project currently? Does it still exist? Does it continue?
Yeah, it still exists, and I think that it's quite important for the future of Russian society, and maybe even for the future of Europe. It calls Free Moscow University, and it's a totally independent project, which, more than 100 of teachers and professors and several thousands of students. We provide them university level of education via Zoom. Everything is free for these students. And for now, we became the only, why it's so important for me, we became the only group of teachers in Russia which is strongly against war. and our students supported us.
The only one.
Yeah, the only one. I mean, like organizational group, because some people just pretend to keep silent, and other people, support President Putin officially. And so, if we speak about the whole organization, we are the only educational organization which are against war. And so, for now, I believe that we have a very obvious task for this year. We have to provide for several, let's say, maybe for a few dozens of Russian students, an opportunity to be connected to the global educational world. So we want to provide them just few programs, a few places on Erasmus Plus and something like this. It's very common, very simple things. But for now in Russia, it's they cut off of these things maybe for years or decades. Yeah. And I think that we have to rebuild this, this participation, anti-war and pro-European Russians in European educational and civil projects. So this is our goal, like Free University.
If you have, both of you, if you have one thing that you would expect and you would request from the European Union as an institution for this work, what would this be? Maybe we start with you. I mean, are there any expectations by the people who came here, who escaped and who want to continue working? Are there any expectations to Brussels, to here, to Ms. von der Leyen, to the Commission, to the Parliament?
There is civil society. We are there. We exist. What we do matters because we have the same goal, and we just want to be recognized, I think, and that's how it's not that we ask for support. I think this is a common thing. We are doing the same thing. We have the common cause here. And as a civil society, we are part of the biggest civil society, and civil society should become an actor these days.
You mean of the international civil society?
Of the international civil society. These things are global. Civil society is not limited to one country. Civil society should become a global actor in the international architecture. We see it failed after the World War II. So now it's time to rebuild the whole thing, and civil society should be at the table.
So if you had a wish list, which would be on top of the wish list?
Wish list for European authorities is quite simple. Help Ukraine as much as possible. We have common tasks here. Putin have to be stopped, and if we stop him, we start to rebuild our society.
This is actually a very moving final word, to be honest, because to hear, people from Russia, and when you asked what is your main point now, and the main point is to help Ukraine, I think this is the best proof that maybe we still have a future in Russia as well. Thanks for everything you've been doing. Thanks for your courage.
Slava Ukraini.
Slava Ukraini. Героям слава.
Ukraini, да.
Thank you so much to everyone who's been watching, and we continue with our series. Greetings from Brussels, and yes, Slava Ukraini. And Россия будет свободной. Russia will be free.
Россия будет свободной.